Greetings. My name is Michael Miller, and this is a Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, the Core New Core, and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor and student, of course. And why surviving? Because the beginning of the string for me is Joseph Pilates, and the first description of significance I've gotten from anyone that ever knew him was that Joseph Pilates was a survivor. And that's from a long time ago and not necessarily however he may be recently portrayed. And in that light, took it to heart, and that his training, his method is survival training. So number one out of three, well, two really, which is because my successful broadcast yesterday of yesterday's subjects, titles, went fine, and when I got to Facebook, I was never got connected to Facebook. So one of my takeaways at the end of my broadcast is to exist on multiple platforms so that you could exercise that muscle of whatever it is that one does when one shares with the world, themselves, something, a reflection, right, a manipulation, whatever it is. Number one out of three, the lesson of the chair. The lesson of the chair. Because I saw a wonderful video clip of an instructor guiding a student through a performance of a classical expression of the moving on the chair, one foot standing on the chair and one foot on the pedal. So by chair, I'm talking about, right, a Pilates chair that has the distinctive characteristic of a lever that hinges on one end and is sprung loaded on the other. Tensioned would be better, right? So, cut to the chase. The chair is the piece of apparatus in classical Pilates, meaning it was part of Joe's apparatus. The chair teaches you about contact points. Okay? Now, contact points are when there is something touching something. Like with a human body touching something. It can be the human body, or it can be just something else out there beside air, something that gives more resistance than air does. The lesson of the chair is that in contact points, when you use contact points, there's something that's making a noise, and I'm not sure if I'm causing it or not. Oh, see, there's being, thinking, and observing. And here I am, trying to be so focused in what I'm telling you that I hear this knocking, and it turns out that my foot is, of all things, on a little level, and that level that I'm tapping is landing on my core new spring, And that spring was tapping upon a humidifier, the plastic, and it was tapping on the plastic. And I couldn't figure out what it was. That was my foot tapping in my conversation. And it would start when I started talking, and never mind. But observing, see. What's critical about that in life and survival is observing and processing your sensation, even when it's confusing and mysterious and just tied up with your own movement. Now that we've resolved that, the chair is the hardest piece of exercise, hardest piece of equipment, because it teaches you that you really have to generate internal dynamic, being very general about it, but you have to have something internal going on that's dynamic to really be out and away, just standing on a chair, or connected to the spring, especially because it's the chair that has the spring tension that sort of captures some of its essence. Because the chair has this lever that's got springs attached to it, and you engage that tension. And the chair teaches you how to engage your tension internally by being forced to establish it externally first. That doesn't make much sense. Well, what am I saying? All right, so contact points. That's what this is about, contact points. Not endpoints. Endpoints are axes of rotation. They're the end of the axis of rotation. Those are end points. But contact points are where the body's in contact with something, maybe itself, like in heels together, but maybe not, and something else where it's what the body's connected to that creates, it's what the body's in contact with that creates the contact point. Nothing elaborate, but just that's what I'm talking about. So within Michael Miller Pilates, and within the recognition of endpoints of tension being here, no, I'm heading off the deep end there for what the point I wanted to make. All right, so forgive me. And for me, it always resolves sensationally to try to make a point so that someone can say, oh, I feel that, right? I feel that. Not just intellectually, I get it. And so at least 6 and maybe more low chairs, no, high chairs really, where there's a back and there's handles. But I could put everyone in the position of standing at an angle, by virtue of a little wood strip to show the angle, and then placing your foot, that foot on the chair and a low foot on the pedal. You know this. And all I did was instruct them to go down and come up. And under observation, every one of them leaned into the high foot to get a line through that leg and press straight down to go up. Meaning that the bottom leg really wasn't helping in the loading of the situation. It was just on the pedal, supported up by the spring. So it's change in loading there, right? So have them do it one way, and then have them do it another, and have their own experience inform them. All you're doing is this, right? at a very high level, at an existential level, because it's about existence and what you put yourself into and why. To survive is why, and what you put yourself into is a conditioning that mirrors the reality that we find ourselves in, which is biology moving through space, through physics. Biology in a world of physics. For me, it's hard to imagine a world of biology that could possibly exist without the world of physics around it, or as part of it. And yet, at some levels, in some perspectives, coming from some mind's eyes, there would be no physics without the biology. Be that as it may, being a human being and seeing the fragility of human beings in a world of physics that seems much more stable than biology in terms of survival. The lesson of the chair, after they've done it once, completely relying on like a linear press through space, I have them with their foot on the pedal on the outside a little bit so that they can squeeze in towards the hinge, so that they can use their inner thighs. Most of them, if they're doing that, they've been on a reformer or done the footwork as part of the mat, that kind of thing. So I'm not denying there's some degree of ability previous to the orchestration of the movement in the group, but all the more satisfying when, by having them use their adductors and squeeze in as part of the going up, how less they leaned and more from the squeeze of it, they were able to rise straight up. The better you're at, the engagement of the contact points to make tension within. So when the group all makes some kind of audible impression, where does it go from that? Where does it go from foot on a pedal that runs like this is to take the foot like this in a demi-point and find pressure going forward so your legs are scissoring closed so that you don't lean forward on the chair and push down to go up. You squeeze together to rise up. I know that's just linguistics, but there is a difference in the means of engagement. And once you can feel how facilitating it is to engage in that way, and I'd say facilitating to what? Well, having more control. Being able to move your weight through space with more ease and grace. Right? Now I lost my train of thought in waxing poetic. The lesson of the chair is it teaches you that, well, I use it to, there's 10,000 views, upon 10,000 views of the chair and the experimentation with it. And part of the beauty of the sparsity of Joe's original work is the manifestation of diversity in its interpretation. while we're on the chair, sitting on the chair in a Pilates V with your feet on the pedal, reaching up and hands back on the back. More vaguely, because I don't want you to do this without someone helping you. Of course, you have to have a low chair. And anymore, see, talk to your doctor. Be in the presence of your doctor whenever you do any Pilates. You know, have insurance. As a Pilates instructor, have insurance. Know your insurance agent. Know what more you could have than insurance. Margaret has always done right by me for having me insured to be a Pilates teacher and instructor. I don't have insurance right now, and I haven't had to have insurance because all I do is talk about Pilates here with you. And I don't try to teach, well, see, that's what I don't want to do. I don't want to literally try to teach it because it's too important to have someone experienced with you while you explore it. Right? Where was I going with that? To be up in a big extension and know that you're then pulling, your hamstrings are engaged in the sense that it's pulling back through the pedal into the hinge to connect up into your hands. Your hands make a contact point and your metatarsals make a contact point. And to the extent that you can draw interaction between those 2 points, I think you bring more musculature engagement into the picture, and because of that, you're lighter in space. Never to the extent of, if this is your body and this is your spine, never to the extent of losing the nature of the uniform engagement you're after. By whatever you call that, whatever name, however you want to look at it. I've called it fluorescence because it makes a great comparison to the way that works. It's not literally, but to the way that works. And I was headed to another one. Oh, hydraulics. Because this tube, that I'm not going to wave around on camera, this tube is lined with stitches in order to sustain an amount of pressure so that the fluid can do its thing because of the pressure being transmitted through it. So, within the MMP point of view and using endpoints to make tension between each other, it becomes one big hydraulic system that, in being engaged in uniform engagement, isn't just about something that's uniformly engaged, but the dynamic of it. See, I'm not smart enough to know that, how that all works. But static loads and dynamic loads, and the people that want to teach Pilates, that know about that still really understand what Pilates is, knowing how much Pilates makes sense from the point of view of physics, can really help you embody the biology that you're seeking to help coordinate their capacities. So that when then you do climb the mountain on the chair, all of it, your foot just isn't on the pedal going up and down, and the weight is just supporting your dead weight because all your weight is on your supporting foot. The word primitive rings off in my head, but not meanly, just it goes from this and where you're doing it from to this when you're dynamically interacting with your contact point, your metatarsals on the pedal, to create dynamic tension in your body. And you can do that any way you want, with any image you want, and however dynamic it is, I think you get the same result of control. I almost choked on that. I think when you reach for it ideally, right, you approach as much control as you can get, ideally. We strive toward the ideal, and what in that inspiration, we get what becomes real. Insofar as the movement, the exercise, how you dove. Oh man. All right. So in Facebook, I'm going to try to review yesterday's titles. I'm not going to put you even through that because I don't want to look at it again either. But there was a lot in that. There's a lot in that. So if you haven't seen that, go to yesterday's YouTube and watch that. So that was number 2. This is number 3. And see, I've already said what I was going to say, which is control comes from dynamic tension. So this whole image of uniform, of contrology develops the body uniformly. And developing the body uniformly am I not saying that, isn't it the tension? It's the uniformity of the tension, like in hydraulics, that you have to have to the extent that you have hydraulics throughout the system, you have the advantage of the hydraulics. There. Now I wish I was sitting down with a bunch of guys from NOAA, or just the gentleman from NOAA that designed radar for boats. Very bright man, wave. But to sit among them and talk about that kind of stuff, dynamic tension and hydraulics, and the human being's capacity to create a tension in the pursuit of this ideal shape of the Cornu spiral, which is just that shape right there. From hips to shoulders, and from shoulders to ears, it certainly feels that the body has the capacity to engage in oppositional tension that alternates between those endpoints. And that the other endpoints, bone to bone, are not as dramatic and can't get as much eccentric effort, because the only thing that the body consists of here is the spinal column, and true up here, whereas at the knees and the ankles and the metatarsals, it's all bone to bone. And I don't know, be sure you color in the bones and the muscles of the anatomy coloring book. Seriously, this is, if you haven't done it, why not? And really So that's an endorsement of knowing, acknowledging that anatomy exists in the body, and muscles and bones are the primary things to know about. And so here was the page that was turned to that shows what? The layers of the abdominals. And that's where my phrase, fly TVA, ribs to buttocks. I fly TVA, ribs to buttocks, don't you? Michael Miller really suggests flying TVA, ribs to buttocks all the way. And all that means is that you're using the transverse abdominis, that layer of musculature, to connect ribs, that do connect ribs to buttocks. And it's in that connection that you connect one axis of rotation, like battery power, to another axis of rotation. These can just rotate and spin at will unless somehow they connect in a way that keeps them connected, and the tension in the opposition of the rotation. This is really boring, isn't it? I'm sorry. But the tension in the opposition of the rotation is what the body feeds off of. The physics in the body, the physics reaching to accomplish. No, I said that wrong. Biology accomplishes the physics. Otherwise they couldn't move. It wouldn't move. It's like movement. It was about getting from one place to another in space. And so as far as being alive, movement is part of that, it would so seem. Ask Rodin, the sculptor. And would you expect the human being to be any less sophisticated in the way it engages its musculature, its skeletal structure, its capacities, from my point of view, of being, thinking, and observing? There's nothing better than being completely coordinated that way. And I forgot where I was going with the other thing. So control comes from dynamic tension. And it's in knowing about contact points, which was the lesson of the chair is contact points. I hope there's some cohesion to this. The contact points that the chair teaches you about, you learn, or you find you need in order to find the dynamic tension you're after internally that allows you to control yourself in space. So if you're standing on one foot on the chair and your knee is bent and the other foot is going in plane up and down with the pedal, it's way hard not to just have your body just start twisting out of control, because it's about the physics that you're having to maintain in order to control that exercise. So, and then, like I said when I started, in closing, have more platforms than one. And by all means, explore how other people utilize a platform as an example to you about how you might utilize it. Okay? Now, yesterday I talked about an invitation to Instagram, a request to follow, that I usually let anybody follow what I have to put out there, but I really filter what I let in. I just can't handle so much. I'm very selective in that. And yet when I saw a picture of the teaser on the Reformer, where the line of of the rope, the strap, whatever it was in line with the arms, and the arms were perfectly parallel to the legs, and the head was up and in pretty good position, not making a statement, but it was good and it was clean. And it made the point that when your straps are at ground level, the level of the reformer, maybe that should be platform level, but at the level of the reformer carriage, where the ropes or the straps, that was all risers. That was yesterday or before. But the place was, no, I can't read my own writing. Something, new lines. E.S. Pilates, Abarca. The letter E, the letter S, the word Pilates, and then Abarca. That's how it sounds to me. A-B-A-R-C-A. If you're on Instagram, go look for that line on the teaser of the strap and the arms. And it's more than, to me, more than just art. See, that's the deal. Pilates, your movement in Pilates is an expression of how well you can embrace the reality that you're in, the physics that you're in. And as an instructor, how would I make a point with that? In allowing the tension to come from the carriage level, reformer level, not on risers, you allow the reach, the line of the reach, I want to back up. You allow the line of the tension, the springs come, in this case the straps that are attached to the springs, but the line of the tension, you're allowing to line up with the position of the exercise, the teaser, right? And that's so pleasing, to be so pure, to line up the tension so it's going through the shoulders, out the arms. And the purer that is in position, in posture, then the more that opens up where the head can follow suit and be 3 points on a straight line, if the performer chose that. Oh, and then my other mention about multiple platforms. On Instagram, Bevir Pilates, which is B-E-V-I-R, Pilates. I think it's Spanish for Be Alive Pilates, but I might be mistaken. Now, I just met E.S. Pilates and definitely followed back because of the lines, because of the look that the images portrayed, which is why I share it with you. And Bevir Pilates has been an instructor I've known and respected for a long time, and yet never would have pursued a course in marketing or presenting in connecting to her audience. There's a way that I would never have imagined, and I think is a great example of using the technology to your advantage. You have to want to do that or be interested in marketing that way. But to me, it seems cutting edge and immediate. And now if you and I could all figure a way to independently get paid direct without an advertising interest interfere, that's why I'm going to put PayPal on my Facebook post before I broadcast. If you like the broadcast, go right down there in Facebook and support. So, life can't live forever. And sometimes you can think you're in perfect control and stumble and fall flat on your face and wonder if and how bad, and if you are, how badly you're injured. And when you're lucky enough to come away with a bump and a bruise, that to me is serious warning that your observing has to keep you within range of not being present enough to avoid that kind of thing. All right. Life can't live forever. Read between the lines, right? And something about it's not only read between the lines, but appreciate differences in perspectives for your own peace of mind and to your own advantage. That would be my, and don't expect the world is going to come to your point of view in your lifetime, because I've learned that's stressful and very freeing. To add two and two and make a living within your ability, your personal ability to deliver as an instructor. And then I still feel that I've done my best to make my profession as clearly as I can for as long as I can, so that through the merry-go-round of learning, the carousel really, because the carousel moves counterclockwise when viewed from above, and that for me lets me see things left to right. That's a long ways back, but that's in part of this series. I looked today and I asked Google 5/7 of the number of days I've been broadcasting, because I haven't broadcast every day, just weekdays. So 5/7 of the whole ought to be 5 days out of every 7, right? And it was like over 600 easily. And I was amazed that Google came right with an answer in a calculator. And amazed that I've been able to maintain a routine that has created that much archival data from the fun on top of the fun of getting to do this. What is this? Getting to point to a point of view and empower you to find the sensation I'm talking about, and use your recognition and understanding of core new tension and Michael Miller Pilates, which is MMP, which really is just ideal Pilates. And that's what I said yesterday, and it was in my title, right? That, where was that? That Michael Miller-Pilates believes the science of biology and physics matter. If you're going to talk about Pilates, we got to talk about Pilates. We got to talk about biology and physics. Those matter. At least, in my opinion, they matter to the Pilates instructor. And there I go, losing the one page. That from the MMP point of view, the science of biology and physics matters. And a cohesive view of Pilates can be made within them. And that's the MMP view. It looks at biology and physics and seeks to make a cohesive view from Joe's original work. And just Joe's. All you need are 3 things out of his book. And knowing 2 more definitions, one of what this tension is all about, and 2 is what the definition of the ideal is, according to MMP, you can be off and running through wherever you want to go with that. And in 40/40, it will still be the same. Maybe appreciate perspective as a admonition. Appreciate perspective. We talked about that before. But what you know about CT and MMP, and then it's hard to fit it in with the rest unless you appreciate the perspective. And then it's your choice as to what, if anything, you make of what you know, right? It's always been that way. Read between the lines, appreciate perspective, add 2 and 2, right? From your perspective, not only appreciate it, but then see the financial value, right? And ask for the moon. And then, offer less or not at all, because if they don't want it, they certainly aren't going to want what. You don't have to sell anybody anything about CT or MMP, because if they don't want to understand it, they won't. And that's why you get paid up front, like you're giving a gondola ride to the peak of the mountain. I love that image. And you buy the ticket up front, and the host talks on the way up, and you can look around and talks on the way, and then you get to go back down. Doesn't even have to go back down, really, because the whole talk happens from the point of view. So, where are we at? Direct your thinking? Geist.